and whether to
No, they're clearly not used to doing this.
Hey, sorry about that, everybody. Hopefully you can hear us now.
Yes.
So hello, everyone on Zoom. I did not realize that that you couldn't hear me. I don't know if you were in on the introduction that Valerie gave before I arrived, but I'm talking now about my most recent book. Let's see if I can get it to where you can see it. It's called Radical Endurance, Growing Old in an Age of Longevity. It's published by the University of Minnesota Press, everyone. So let me talk now, briefly, tell a little story about what happened to me. This was in the spring of 2020, in May, and this was just when the pandemic was kind of really in full, very scary swing, and no one quite knew what to do about it, how long it would last. We knew very little about it at that point. And so in May of that year, I had a televisit with my primary care doctor. And we talked about, I had a lot of tests and things coming up, mammogram, blood draw, all the things that come up as a result of a doctor appointment. And so we were kind of talking together about when would I have all these things. And she said, well, let's just put them off. And probably by September or so, this will all be over. And then you can just catch up then. That was not to be, as you know. So I decided, so this is what I say. 4 days after this appointment, this was a Tuesday in May, so several weeks before my 75th birthday in July. So I say, having had my fill of the news, I decided to visit my online health chart to review my doctor's notes from our visit. I wanted to clarify whether I was supposed to schedule an appointment for 3 months hence. In other words, when the pandemic was all over. I logged in, found my chart, opened the doctor's progress notes, and read the first sentence. I quote, Andrea Gilats is a 74-year-old female who presents at that age. What? Instantly, I reacted to what that sentence could have said, but did not. How about this? Andrea Gilats is a 74-year-old female who presents at a much younger age. But that's how it goes. I felt bemused and slightly hurt. I had never thought of myself as the picture of pink cheek vitality, but I had always thought of myself as, quote, presenting younger than my chronological age. In fact, I believe that my own mother had actually told me as much when I was middle-aged. She presents at that age. I felt a think coming on. Then, in the split second it takes for puzzlement to become rumination, a shockwave of emotion shot through me. Imagine that in an instant of inattention, you walk half a step too far on the slippery rock floor at the head of Niagara Falls, and at the moment the edge betrays you, you are swept 167 feet downward by the fury of the great waterfall. Miraculously, you land alive, but you are forever altered. In a tumble down Niagara Falls, in a stumble down an invisible rabbit hole, in what I can only call an astonishing leap of consciousness, I saw that I was about to descend from older woman to old woman. A self-protective myth was about to give way to reality. In only 9 more Tuesdays, I would no longer be a 74-year-old woman who presents at that age. I would be a 75-year-old woman, and heaven only knew at what age I would present. For the first time, there would be no second chances after mistakes or misfortune. There would be no more opportunities to try to get it right. I had spent my entire life trying to get it right, whatever it happened to be, but now I was face to face with elemental vagaries. For what would I strive? Toward what would I work? Who would I become? The life I had lived over my lifetime was coming to what felt like a screeching end. But once my mind settled down, I began to understand that in its place, a new way of living would have to emerge, one in which striving and working would no longer define me. I felt all at once the terror of finality, but also a faint sense of relief, of movement toward peace of mind. And I feel like since then, in the years since then, that has really been uppermost for me. I feel a sense of peace of mind, or kind of coming to terms with myself, if anyone kind of can relate to what that means. A sense of being at peace with myself that I really never felt when I was younger. So that was the beginning of my journey into old age. But I want to talk a little bit about old age itself and the way people think in our dominant society about old age. Because we live in a very ageist culture, our dominant culture. I think there are cultures around the world that that don't have that so much. But we do, unfortunately, in our culture. And this is what I write that I would like to share with you. I wrote this after reading about a very famous woman, a writer and a scholar. Her name was Carolyn Heilbrunn, and she was the first and for a long time the only female member of the English department at Columbia University. So you can imagine what it was like for her. This would have been in the 1960s. She finally, I think she reached a point where she couldn't take it anymore. And she very abruptly retired from Columbia at the age of 67, I think it was. And she was very open with her friends, saying, I couldn't take it anymore. I had to retire. And, but so once she retired, she wrote 2 marvelous books. I highly recommend them if you like to read. One was a groundbreaking book that came out in 1988 called Writing a Woman's Life. I don't know if some of you are familiar with that book, but it basically what it helped so many of us to understand was that telling the story of a woman's life is different from telling the story of a man's life. So she she tried to clarify that there were certain different things. Like one difference was the life course, the paths of our life that most women followed. So growing up, followed by marriage, sometimes followed by work, but always followed by work in the home, and then retiring when your husband did. And so that was a kind of very common life trajectory for women certainly in the 50s and well into the 60s, if not well into the 70s. So that book was a very meaningful book to, I think, a lot of women. Then, though, as she got older, this came later, she wrote a book about later life, called The Last Gift of Time, Life After 60. And I don't know, when I think of 60 now, I think, oh, that's so young. But I think for her, it felt like I felt when I turned 75. But what happened to her after that was that she couldn't get interested in anything. She couldn't think of another project. She was a happily married woman. She had a wonderful husband. She had two wonderful kids. She had two grandchildren. Um, she had, by all accounts, a meaningful, happy life. But as time went on, she started to talk to friends about her sense of becoming what she called a useless person,
Mm.
good for nothing. And she became kind of obsessed with that feeling that she was a useless person. I think, and now as I have read what her close friends have said about that feeling of hers, it was ageism. She felt herself to be done. And she, in fact, she told a friend, she said, I just don't know what is happening to me. I'm a useless person. The next morning, she was found on her living room floor with a plastic bag over her head and
Mm.
a bottle of aspirin next to her. And she had a note beside her that said, "The journey is over, love to all." And she was a marvelous woman. You can imagine all her accomplishments, but that's what happened to her. And I think, as people have said, that she was probably so brought down by ageism that she finally succumbed. So this is what I write. What is so terrifying about old age that people actually kill themselves to avoid or abort it? I'm a novice at being old, but I believe I know the answer to this question. In contemporary American culture, old age is viewed almost entirely through an ageist lens. The condition of being old is understood through and characterized by prejudice. Even the word old has become a slur because it is defined as the bleak, used up,
Ah.
discardable opposite of young, full of potential, embraceable. Indeed, ageism is one of our dominant society's most pervasive prejudices. Almost everyone who grows old suffers because of it. And even in old age, most of us are both perpetrators and victims, unless we reach, of course, a point at which dementia frees us from our acculturated biases. So finally, when I was writing the book, I went on Google and I typed in synonyms for old because I just wanted to see what would it give me. And honestly, I'm going to read to you the synonyms it gave me. I didn't cherry pick these, like I didn't leave some good ones out or anything. But here they are, and they're in alphabetical order. Honestly, this is the truth. Aged, along in years, ancient, broken down, debilitated, decrepit, elderly, enfeebled, exhausted, experienced, fossil, geriatric, getting on, gray-haired, grizzled, hoary like hoarfrost, impaired, inactive, infirm, mature, not young, olden, oldish, over the hill, past one's prime, seasoned, senile, senior, skilled, superannuated, tired, venerable, versed, veteran, and wasted. 2/3 of these words and phrases are pejoratives that refer to both men and women. They do not include synonyms that are both sexist and ageist. So for women, biddy, crone, hag, old bag, and old bat. And for men, codger, curmudgeon, goat, and old fart. This tiny survey, excuse me, everyone. This tiny survey that I did barely scratches the surface of our country's ageist lexicon because it does not include most of the sexual obscenities include to describe women, including impossibly old women. You can imagine what words I'm talking about. So I think that we have to be aware of ageism and try to resist it in our everyday lives. Excuse me. I'm sorry, everyone. I hope this tickle will go away. I want to tell you a little story about something that happened to me. This was not that long ago. A couple of years ago, I get my prescriptions through an online pharmacy that is part of the clinic that I go to. And so it's I don't know if you know of this, but it's one of those good deals where if you order your prescriptions online, you can get a 3-month supply of a prescription for only 2 months of copay. So it's financially, it's very helpful. But I had a problem with one of my prescriptions. I don't even recall exactly what it was, but so I had to call the online pharmacy and talk to a customer service person. And as I was trying to tell her what was wrong and she was looking at her records and whatever, she kept calling me honey over and over again. And honestly, finally, I thought, no, I have to stand up. So I said to her, honestly, very politely, I said, please don't call me honey. It's not professional. And she didn't call me honey anymore, but she was very nice to me after that. So let me see where we are now that I digressed like that. Okay. I think now it's time to get positive here. One of the things that I often talk about when I talk about radical endurance is the idea of a happy old age, a time when we have come to greater understanding of ourselves, to greater peace of mind, and old age may be a mixed bag. You know, our health futures are not as reliable as they once were. Anything can happen to upset the apple cart of our lives as we age. We may have a loss, for example. Now I lost what I was going to say. But I think we can have a deeper, more honest happiness than was possible for us earlier in life. And kind of going on that, one reason why I came to this belief was because of a wonderful man named Gene Cohn, Genechon. He was a psychiatrist who spent his entire career working with older patients. And he learned a lot about old people through that experience. And what he found was sort of a gold mine. I'm going to just read what I say a little bit more about him. In 2005, he published a book called The Mature Mind, The Positive Power of the Aging Brain. So this is something we can take to heart and feel really good about. In that book, he synthesized his observation from his vast experience as a clinician with his studied interpretations of the young millennium's most influential brain research to prove that the human mind, which is, after all, the brain's expression, could adapt and expand throughout the entirety of one's life. Cohn took inspiration from Albert Einstein, who elevated thinking to a starry art by marrying it to actions in the universe. All that is valuable in human society, Einstein said, depends upon the opportunity for development accorded the individual. By the time we enter old age, we have been developing for a lifetime. And Gene Cohn understood that. He used that insight to prove that lifelong mental development is no less certain than breath itself. He conceived of a human condition that he called developmental intelligence. So let me read to you how he defines this. This is a quote from him. Developmental intelligence is defined as the maturing of cognition, emotional intelligence, judgment, social skills, life experience, and consciousness, and their integration and synergy. With aging, each of these individual components of developmental intelligence continues to mature, as does the process of integrating each with the others. That is why so many older adults continue functioning at very high intellectual levels and display the age-dependent quality of wisdom. So we are continuing to get smarter and smarter throughout the entirety of our lives, but we are also wiser and wiser. And when you put those together, that makes us very full, rich people. So I wanted just to share that with you. And now I want to just be a little mindful of the time. Okay. I want us to have a chance to ask questions, and if you want to share a story or make a comment, I'd be so happy to hear whatever you want to share. But let me close now. This is kind of my longer deal here. I want to talk about another gentleman named Herbert Kohl, Kohl. And I don't know if any of you in the world of K-12 education are perhaps familiar with his name. He was a very renowned educator, and he broke new ground in terms of progressive education, especially working with minority children. He wrote 40 books over his career. One of his early books has become a classic in the field. It's called 36 Children. It's the story of his time working in a Brooklyn storefront with minority children. And it's a very touching and insightful book. Not a long book by any means, so some of you might enjoy it. But this is what he says. He published a book called Painting Chinese. A lifelong teacher gains the wisdom of youth. I just talked about wisdom. And it was published in 2007, just as he was turning 70 years old. And here's what he says. He says, he was 70, so he did not have as much gas in his tank as when he was in his 30s and writing all those 40 books, you know. So here's what he said. One of my problems with becoming older was a stubborn refusal to accept the inevitable slowing down that comes with age. I continued to work 12 hours a day, even though occasionally I almost passed out from exhaustion. In the past, I was somehow able to complete things, but increasingly I couldn't keep up with myself. I needed to learn to live and learn and create at a slower pace and with less ambition, less ego. He began this new learning after what could be called a last hurrah. Here's what he says. For the 5 years before I turned 70, I created and directed a teacher education program at the University of San Francisco based on the idea of integrating issues of social justice throughout the curriculum, hoping to bring idealistic young people into public school teaching and to fortify them with skills and stamina to make their dreams practical realities. A good goal. I succeeded in recruiting 30 students to the program each year, most of them students of color, and had a wonderful time with them. The program ended bitterly in the 4th year when the university cut it after the funding I had raised ran out. I had put an enormous energy into developing and teaching in the program, and during my last year there, felt worn down physically and emotionally, not from the teaching, but from the constant harassment by the administration. This is my voice now. During the despondent days that followed the demise of his program, Cole began strolling the streets near the university. These were random ambles during which he could people watch over a cup of tea, enjoy the comings and goings of the neighborhood street life, and window shop as he walked. His favorite haunt was Clement Street, a bustling commercial hub serving San Franciscans of Chinese heritage. Am I getting feedback from the mic? Are you able to? Okay. One mundane morning, Herb happened by a storefront featuring a sign that said Joseph Fine Art School. He saw that the school offered classes in painting, an art form that had always interested him and in which he had dabbled from time to time over the years. His curiosity was piqued. If ever there were a time to try something new, this was it. He entered the empty school and asked the attendant if he could speak to Joseph Fine. It turned out that Joseph Fine was actually Joseph Jingking Yan, and his fine art school specialized in Chinese brush painting and related arts. Now Herb was even more interested. He says, stumbling upon that school on Clement reminded me of the times I'd promised myself to take painting lessons one day. He writes, he says, I decided to enroll in a class, whatever the school was like, and turn casual painting into an integral part of my new life. It would also bind me in a specific way to the Clement world I was beginning to create as a way of providing some transition to my indefinite future. Little did Herb know that his fellow students would be Chinese children between the ages of 4 and 7 years old. I've gotten such a kick out of that. I just love this work. To Cole's utter delight, Joseph and his co-teacher and wife, Jannie, along with his fellow students, treated him with the same respect they accorded each other and accepted him without reservation or prejudice as one of their classmates. That is how Herb Cole came to spend 3 years learning to paint Chinese at the Joseph Fine Art School. Near the end of the book, Painting Chinese, Herb writes, painting Chinese enriched my political, educational, and personal life. It kept me from despair at losing my program at the University of San Francisco and not knowing what I might do next. It opened me up to moving back to my home and writing instead of trying to be involved in educational struggles full time. And it confirmed my belief that being on the side of the positive at a historical moment when the negative was ascendant, however painful and frustrating, was the only way I could live. This is me talking now. It is the only way I can live too. In fact, I have come to believe that being on the side of the positive is the only way any of us can live a committed, personally meaningful, peaceful life in old age, no matter which way the winds of time blow. So we are at a headwind now, everyone, and it's important to be positive. I want to close by reading another quote from her. That story, as you can imagine, made me such a fan of his. Think of how it must have felt as a 70-year-old man to be on the same fitting with little children. Those of us with grandkids kind of know what it's like to sit down on the floor and play. But he is just an outstanding person, so widely respected. And he had another quote from Painting Chinese that I'm going to share with you in a minute, but I have to tell you the little story. I loved that book so much that I wanted to take this quote from Herb in this book and use it as the epigraph to Radical Endurance. You can see, and those of you on Zoom, the front page where I have a quote. And so I didn't know how to reach Herb Cole. I didn't know, his publisher didn't seem to know where he was or anything about him. But finally, after a bunch of Googles, I was able to locate his daughter. Erica is her name. And she lives in California, as does he. He is very much alive. He's in his late 80s. He is functionally blind now. So she has been reading out Radical Endurance to him. And he, such a generous soul, and he was so happy to have us use this quote from Painting Chinese as the front quote, the epigraph to Radical Endurance. Let me share it with you now. This is what he says. Old age is a time to contemplate and understand the contradictions and find a way to live in harmony with one's spirit and conscience. Ultimately, this might be impossible, but having experience, being able to reflect on the past and grow through it, being able to have a second childhood and grow up again on a conscious level, and being able to put that into paint, music, words, and gestures seems to be part of the art of aging. There's no need to resolve everything. Death will take care of that. Isn't that a beautiful sentiment? So that is what I have for you. And so we have some time now. If any of you have questions or want to share a story or make a comment, I think there are some things in the chat here on Zoom, and I'll try to look at that. But first of all, does anyone here in the room have anything they'd like to share or a question? I'm happy to try to answer anything, any questions. Yes,
Why did you choose that title for your book?
Radical Endurance. I chose Radical Endurance because it is radical to endure for such a long life. And in fact, there's a well-known researcher who coined a term, this is probably 25 years ago now. She coined the term extra long life. And in my work at the university, when I kept thinking about an extra long life, and when I started researching what that meant, aging experts would say that to live past 85 is considered an extra long life. And from there, what came to my mind was that is radical endurance. That is extraordinary. That is something to be proud of. And that's how I got the name. I just dreamed it up, really. Anybody else? Let me just sip here for a minute.
And I want to say that I never felt old or older because it's just one day at a time. And we're going to rest with one of you now
Yes,
and keep moving.
yes,
If you just say I'm old and give up, I know I have a friend that at 90 said, oh, I can't do anything. I'm 90. Well, that's not a positive way.
yes, that's so true. Thank you.
So keep going.
Yes, okay, I'm gonna share that with our people on Zoom. I don't know if people on Zoom could hear, but what was your name? I'm sorry. Jean. Jean, who's in the room here with us, basically just ended her comment with, we have to keep going. But she said she never really felt old. She just felt like she was living one day at a time, which isn't that beautiful advice? Thank you, Jean. Anybody else here in the room? Yes.
85, it's a great age to reach, but I'm living now with so many people are in their 90s and even a few that are 100. So I think our longevity has changed, let's say 30, 40 years.
Yes,
You know, there's a lot more people that are living in the
yes.
years.
It's exactly right. Thank you. Yes, exactly. What's your name? Anne. Anne was just saying that, she knows, it's one thing to get 85 and past that, but she says she knows more and more people, many people, in fact, who are living into their 90s, and beyond, in fact. And I have known people like that too. You can imagine that as I have gone around and talked about radical endurance and people have read it, I've heard from people, people can contact me through my website, and I've had beautiful messages, everyone, from people in their late 80s, not a 90-year-old yet, but people ranging in age from 85 to 89. Personal messages from them saying exactly what Jean and Anne have just talked about. They were writing me to tell me that they enjoyed the book, which I'm happy that they did. But to affirm that life really does go on for a long time and we can live well for a long, long time. So let me look at the chat here. Of course, I can't. Well, I don't know how to work this laptop, so I can't. Can someone help me with this, Valerie? We'd like to see what's in the chat. Yeah, but I don't know how to.
Well, I got you. Hello, Zoomers. We're checking the chat,
It's mostly no sound.
mostly about we were mooted.
Does
Thank
anyone
you.
have any questions? Thanks for getting the sound. Thank you.
All right. Does anyone have any questions? Zoom or otherwise? Zoom, go ahead and type them and I'll relay them for you. Go ahead.
Oh,
I can monitor.
well, I can,
Oh,
I think
okay.
I can.
Okay.
Yes. Yes.
I'm not a baby. I'm a little bit.
I'm
older.
going to come a little
Baby.
closer.
Cat.
And please.
Okay, I just said I was 84, I'm 5.
This is Pat. She's 84. She'll be 85 in November. Doing this for the people on Zoom. So go ahead.
Okay. I think we all have to remember something. I'm in the silent generation, so I'm
Yes.
older than a baby boomer. And I
The
think
silent
there's
generation,
this
not a baby boomer.
baby boomers that have affected how we think about
Yes.
old age.
Yes, when we were informed, yeah.
So, they're not gonna be sitting around and, you know, waiting for things to happen, you know, they're out and active and keeping spending.
Yes.
So that's a pretty radical change from how people used to think.
It's best not to interrupt.
Yep, I'm just gonna type, so go ahead. Yep.
So let me speak, why don't,
Yep, go
to
ahead.
the people on Zoom.
Okay, I'm just translating so they know.
So for our Zoom participants,
Here.
Pat was just saying that she was making such an important point that the baby boom really radically changed how we think about old age now, no matter how old we get to be. She made the point that that generation is not going to just sit and wait until life is over. They're going to be active and out there. I have a dear friend and someone who was a mentor to me in my years at the university. And he talks about the idea of creating your future. Kind of as though your future, you have a dream, your future is out there in front of you, and all you have to do is make it come true. By doing, I think, whatever life calls us to do, and at this point in my life, I'm not crazy about doing things that I don't like to do anymore. I want to do things that are enjoyable and meaningful. So anybody else? I see the chat is empty now. Yes.
We still say that to each other, you know, every now and then, especially if you have a bad day. Tomorrow's a whole new day. Tomorrow's a whole new, yeah. Start over in the morning.
Yes, yeah, it's so, yes, I'm gonna share that now, in case people here didn't hear or whatever. It was Rosemary, right? Rosemary was just saying that she and her husband have a saying that, they say tomorrow's a whole new day. And when you talk about making your future, that is so true. I always, when I get up in the morning, what a new habit of mine has been where my bedroom is, I face, if the bedroom door is open, I face a window that looks out of my kitchen. And I keep that, I live on the 5th floor of my building, so there's no one to see me. But I leave that window shade up all night because when I awake in the morning, I want to see the light. It lifts my spirit to say, oh, it's another day. It's just what you were saying, Rosemary. Anybody else? Yes.
You just have to make a comment, loneliness, because that's a huge problem. And, I don't know, I think that's the individual, the kind of person they are. Are they gonna keep making, making connections with people? But I think it gets harder and harder with the elderly to do that. And I just think that's a really important thing to keep you healthy and thinking ahead.
That's so important, Ann. Ann was just saying, she brought up such an important issue, which is loneliness. And her point is that you have to seek social connection in order to make sure to keep loneliness at bay. In Radical Endurance, everyone, I do talk a lot about loneliness. And I don't know if people read about this in their newspaper or saw it on TV or anything, but a year ago or so, the US Surgeon General issued a warning about loneliness, saying that there is a loneliness epidemic in our country now. And loneliness is not only no fun, it is not healthy. It's associated with an 11 to 15% chance of dying before you are ready. So what they call early death, whatever that means. I don't think they have an exact age for that. It's just before you are ready. The other thing, this was just last week. A new study has said that loneliness, they've now done research that shows that loneliness is associated with a 31% greater chance of getting some form of dementia. So people working in dementia care and dementia prevention are taking that to heart. And with all this research out there now, hopefully our scientific research will continue and thrive. I mean, and I think that there is a lot of research now being done on the effects of loneliness and how to combat it. I think, Anne, what you just said about finding social connection is such a way for one thing that I think too about that. I don't know what everyone thinks, whether here or online, is that, no, I lost my thought. Oh, ding, hello. Oh, I've been visiting, I've been to 2 or 3 so far, so senior living communities. And what I have seen in these honestly wonderful places with many activities, if you're more introverted and you're not kind of a joiner, then yes, you could be the introverted self that you are. But at the same time, there are many opportunities for a kind of social connection that wouldn't really be possible in any other kind of living situation. So, and I have become such a fan of the people that work in those communities, providing that exact remedy, social connection, but with meaning. Things that stimulate our minds, things that stimulate our creative spirits. These all lead to, I think, much longer and happier lives. So I'm not saying we should all go and live in a senior living community, but it's such a striking example, I think, of just, Anne, what you were talking about. Anybody else? Well, thank you, everyone. I wanted to mention before I go, I have a handout. You know, oh, I'm gonna keep one to show. Thank you. And I'm gonna speak this for our people on Zoom. I have a handout, everyone. Radical Endurance and my first memoir, After Effects, which tells the story of my experience with prolonged grief disorder after my husband died. That was almost 27 years ago. He was 52 when he died. But those 2 books were published by the University of Minnesota Press. And this is, the U of M Press is a treasure of our state. And it's important to support them, I think. And I love it. Well, I don't say I love Amazon, but you know, I know how convenient it is and I use it myself. But, and also I wanted to mention this, the University of Minnesota Press is turning 100 this year. So it's a good time to support them. And they have been so generous, you can't imagine, in the way that they have supported Radical Endurance. And they have honestly given me the liberty to offer a discount. It's a 30% discount off the 1995 price of Radical Endurance if you order your book from the University of Minnesota Press. And you can do that either online. And what I would do is just, I would Google University of Minnesota Press. And when you get to the homepage, there's a search place where you can search. I would just type in radical endurance and you'll get to the page of that book, of my book. And to purchase the book at the discount, all you have to do is enter a discount code. For those of you that have the handout, you'll see it on the bottom there. And I'm going to give it, for those of you who are on Zoom, I'm going to go slowly. RE, standing for radical endurance, 302025. Let me repeat that. RE 302025. If you're not an online person, you can call their customer service number, which is actually at their Chicago distribution center at the University of Chicago. And their customer service phone number for those on Zoom, 1-800-621-2736. So I hope if you are interested in having the book, that you might consider ordering it from the U of M Press. The code is good for all of 2025. So I hope you'll take advantage of that. If you're not a reader, we have our time today, and that's terrific too. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much for coming, everybody. We didn't do very well on the treats, because there's still a lot over there, so grab one for the road. You are more than welcome to look around any exhibits if you're interested. There's no torrential downpour at the moment, so that's the good news. Check out our website for additional events that we have going on. Lots of different categories if you want to bring the grandkids out for story time or our lecture series. So do look that up. And if ever you have suggestions or ideas for topics you would like us to cover or authors we'd like to bring in, shoot an email to the History Center. I'm Valerie. Call, that's great too. And I would love to find topics and people and authors that you're interested in hearing from. So thank you very much. Help yourself and go ahead and look around. Bathrooms, if you need them on your way out, are on your right. Right? And thank you for coming.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you. I'm so happy to have met you.
Right.
Thank you, Valerie. This was great.
I'm gonna put that, you read it beautifully, but I'm gonna put that there, because this is also recorded. Thank you guys for joining us. Stop.